Well, welcome everybody to the Paranormal Show right here on Broadcast Team Alpha. You might not be seeing us on Broadcast Team Alpha. You might be seeing us on the Conscious Awakening Network, 17 other platforms that we stream on, and 32 other platforms that we are hosted over at the Conscious Awakening Network. We do want to do a shout out to the Conscious Awakening Network, and we invite you to go check out what they're doing. You'll also find us over there. All of our shows, the Broadcast Team Alpha show on Tuesday night, this show, the Paranormal Show, on Sunday at 9 p.m. And then, of course, there is the little brief snippet, 30-minute quantum well-being show on Friday at 7:30. That's all Eastern time. We are so excited to present this new show. This is what, like the fourth or fifth one, Augie? Yeah, yeah. So this is a new platform for us, but it has been very long in the making. And I'm here to tell you that if you are a paranormal aficionado, you are going to hang on to your seatbelt because you're going to love where we're going tonight. And if you're new, I just invite you to suspend your disbelief, right? Not just for this show, but for all of the shows, because sometimes we have these points of view that are kind of stuck in our head that prevent us from seeing some of the new things, understanding new information, understanding ancient information that we may have been closed off to. So, without any further ado, our guest is one of our favorite friends. Augie, please tell us about our friend Bill.
Yes, this is going to be fun. We have a very good friend of us here. I have known Bill for probably around 15 years because way back we were talking about stuff that dealt with a lot of different things that is outside the box also. And then we lost contact for a while. And then about 3 years ago, we came back together again, and he is part of our mastermind. And in a little while, you will understand why. There is a mastermind among us here. I want to say just a few things about Bill, and that is he had 4 years in the military, and after that he got educated as a computer software engineer, and he worked for General Dynamics and a few other companies in the regular business world. And now he is a researcher, phenomenal researcher. And that is one of the things he will be talking about. And also he's a light worker. So there is plans for a bigger structure of what he's going to be creating. And I don't think that's maybe for this one, but that will be for later. And for those of you out there that are just now tuning in here, don't go anywhere because we're going to talk about the hollow earth. We're going to talk about ascension. How could it come about? And what would it feel like? What would really happen? And we're going to talk about the galactics. And also, Frank Strangers has some phenomenal stories of personal experience, and we will touch on reincarnation. Maybe we'll do that in the beginning because that could lead to everything else. And also, if we have time, I'd love to talk a little bit about the new currency that is coming out because it is on us right now, 30 days from right about 2 days from now, or somewhere around that. And there's going to be two different systems, and the United States is not invited into one of them. And you may not know about this, so this is going to be good. So welcome to the show, Bill.
Welcome, Bill.
Hi there. Hi, Augie. Hi, Nori.
Hey,
How are y'all
Bill.
doing?
So good. So good. Thank you for being with us. So, I've known you at the mastermind through Augie, and I never really got to ask you, what was your life path? You had, it sounded like you kind of had a traditional life path going on. What were the twists and turns and steps that led you to be the researcher and the light worker and the sharer of amazing information that you are?
Well, I was born here in Oklahoma City. My mother was a strong Christian. My father, not so much. And my mother believed in made sure we went to church and Sunday school. And so my faith grew quite a bit because, you know, preachers I learned the Bible pretty good. And so it was a good thing because it kept me out of a lot of trouble in high school. You know, a lot of people were doing drugs and alcohol, and I stayed away from all that. But my dad encouraged me to, tried to act like he didn't have a lot of money, and he was going to send my sister to college, and said he thought it'd be a good idea for me to join the military. He didn't really, but basically, he just didn't want to pay for college for me. So
Mhm.
I looked into it, and I thought, well, you know, the GI Bill is still good. This was back when they had it where you could actually, you know, join and get your college kind of paid for afterwards. So I looked into it and decided to join, and I got stationed in Lowry Air Force Base, Denver, Colorado, for technical training. And then I finally got my orders, which was stationed over in the Netherlands for 2 years. And then after 2 years working over there, I got stationed at Reese Air Force Base in Lubbock, Texas. Actually, they have dream sheets, and you fill out your favorite place where you'd like to be stationed. And then you hope for the best, but it didn't work out. I put places near the mountains, near the ocean, and I got Lubbock, which is about as flat as you can get, and they have dust storms. So go figure. So I had enough of the Air Force. I got out of the Air Force, and I earned a degree in computer science at the University of Texas in Dallas. And I was still strong in my Christian faith at this time. And I was always interested in Bible prophecy because I always wanted to know the future. What does the future hold? And so then what happened is I found a church, got a job over at General Dynamics in Fort Worth, worked for them for about 4 years, and I got laid off in '91. And I needed to find work, and I got work in the Woodlands, Texas. A company made me an offer called Wiltel, and they were kind of interesting because they were actually an oil and gas company, but they laid down all this pipe across the country, strung fiber, and they didn't know what to do with it because they weren't going to use it. They changed their mind. So someone suggested running fiber optic through all these pipes, and they spun off a telecommunications company, and they were just getting started. And because I had experience in the new Steve Jobs black box computer called the Next computer, if anybody remembers that, goes back years, I had experience in that, and so they hired me, and I worked at Wiltel in telecommunications for about from '91 to '96. But while I was there, my cousin was calling me all the time and telling me I needed to listen to shortwave radio. I kept putting this off, but finally I broke down and bought myself a shortwave radio and started listening to programs like he told me to listen to Hour of the Time with William Cooper and Steve Quayle and a whole bunch of other really great programs at the time because they were all exposing this sinister, dark cabal behind the scenes. And I'd never heard about this, but they were exposing this way back in the early '90s. They were talking about how fraudulent the Federal Reserve was, how there's nothing federal about it. It's owned by private bankers. They talked about the fact that there is no reserves. Those were stolen a long time ago. I was waking up so fast listening to shortwave radio, but they were mostly, even though they were awake and exposing the cabal and who they were, you know, these rich families, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and all that, they were still in this Christian paradigm, and I was too. And so that just kind of reinforced my strong Christian faith. But I was able to verify most everything on shortwave because the internet was coming online in '93, and I was able to go to the internet and type in a lot of stuff and verify, oh, that is true. Oh, that guy said this. Let me check that out. And I'd find an article on it or something else, and I'd always get to confirm what they said on shortwave is absolutely right. And you know, it was really woke me up because I had watched mainstream news, but what I was getting on shortwave was like night and day, just completely different. And it
Wow.
was always, it took about it was always about 6 months ahead. Shortwave was always 6 months ahead from the news finally reporting on the truth. And this woke me up a lot. And, but I was still stuck in that Christian paradigm. And then I started listening to Art Bell, late night talk radio. And that was about 93. Now he started in politics, but then he transitioned into paranormal. So I would get a lot of guests that would come on that I would hear talking about UFOs, um, alien abductions, just all your paranormal categories. And this really stretched my thinking because you know, I was a Christian, but yet this stuff didn't quite fit in. And I was trying to always try to fit it in somewhere. And
Mhm.
when I finally heard a guest in 1995, it just completely blew everything out of the water. And that was a guest by someone by the name of Dr. Frank E. Stranges. And he was claimed to be a Christian minister, but he said he had met someone who claimed to be from another planet, the planet Venus, who worked at the Pentagon. And I thought, well, now this is interesting because I was always trying to write off UFOs and alien abductions as just being demonic, because that's kind of what the church does. They just say, okay, well, that's demonic. Okay, don't mess with it. But when I heard Dr. Strange tell his story, I couldn't just write it off, and it didn't fit into that demonic category by any means. He said that what happened is he had collected UFO pictures. Every time he would find a UFO site, he would show his UFO slide presentation. And he said that he was headed to a church in Washington, D.C. to do one of his UFO slide presentations. And on his way on the plane, he met someone by the name of August Roberts, and he called him Augie for short. And Augie was a photographer for the Pentagon.
Wow.
And he said, Augie, how are you doing? He said, I'm doing good. And they sat together on the plane. And Augie said, hey, did you know that there's somebody that's not from our planet that works at the Pentagon? And Dr. Frank Stern just said, Augie, what are you smoking? And he said, nothing. He says, I got some pictures right here. Take a look at them. And he showed him these pictures. And he said, this is the commander. And he said, this individual is not from here. And he said, well, where's he from? And he said, he's from the planet Venus. And Dr. Strange said, well, what's so special about this guy? He looks just like a human. And Augie said, well, first of all, he can speak over 16 different languages. And Dr. Frank said, well, that's pretty unusual. What else about him? And he said, when he looks at you, it will be like he's looking right through you. And Dr. Frank said, well, Augie, now my dad can do that. What else about him? He said, well, he has no fingerprints.
Wow.
Now, Dr. Frank was studying criminology at the time, and he knew you could peel off your skin, but your fingerprints will always come back. So he knew that this was very unique. And he said, well, can I borrow your pictures? Because I'm going to be doing my slide presentation, my UFO slide presentation, and I'd like to present your pictures, but I'll just say what you told me, and I'll leave it at that. So what he did is he did his presentation, and at the end of it, he said, now I have some photos here. And the people in the congregation were looking at him. He said, I'm going to put them up here, and you can come up and take a closer look if you like. This individual claims to be from another planet, the planet Venus. And if you want to take up a look at him, I'll have him up here, and I'm going to be signing books. So come up here, and if you want to get your book signed, I'll sign it. So one of the ladies in the audience came up to Dr. Frank and said, Dr. Frank, I need to talk to you. And he said, well, I'm busy signing books. She said, no, I need to talk to you now. And she flashed her Pentagon badge at him. So that got his attention. And he said, okay, let's go over here and talk. He says, what is it that you need to talk about? She said, how would you like to meet that individual that you just showed the picture of? And he said his jaw just dropped. And I heard this and I thought, now this is getting interesting. And so Dr. Frank said that the lady's name was Nancy Warren, and she was a secretary at the Pentagon. And she knew about the commander, and she said that she would meet him at the Capitol steps at 8 o'clock in the morning sharp. And to be there at the Capitol, she'll pick him up and she'll take him to the Pentagon to meet him. So he said he showed up an hour early, started pacing back and forth. She showed up at 8 o'clock sharp, picked up Dr. Frank, and they parked the car. And she said, well, we're going to have to go through 2 security gates. So I want you to, first of all, she said, can you take orders? And he said, yes, ma'am. And she said, okay, I want you to do exactly what I do. We got to go through 2 security gates. And so she said, put on your overcoat. And she had an overcoat. She said, I'm going to open my overcoat and show my badge, and they're going to wave me through. And then I want you to do the same thing. Just follow behind me. So he tapped on, they were walking. And as they came up to the gate, he tapped on her shoulder and said, Nancy, I don't have a badge. How am I going to get through? She said, shut up and just do what I do. So she opened up her coat, shut it. The guard waved her through. Dr. Strange just opened up his coat, showed he didn't have anything, but he got waved right on through. And then they came up and he saw there was another gate ahead, and he started getting worried. And he tapped her on the shoulder again and said, Nancy, maybe once, but not twice. She said, shut up and just do what I do. She went up there, opened up her coat, got waved through. He did the same thing, got waved through. And he was just completely just surprised, just blown away that he didn't know what happened. He couldn't figure it out. Anyway, they went inside the Pentagon, and she said, I want you to go down that hallway. You'll see a room there with no nameplate. You're to go into there, and that's where you'll meet the commander. And so he went in there, he said, and there was a desk and 2 people behind the desk. And he tried to make some, they were just completely oblivious to him. And he cleared his throat. They still wouldn't pay any attention. So he went out and came back in and kind of shut the door, so it was really loud this time. And again, they didn't pay any attention to him. And then someone taps him on the shoulder and says, hi, Frank, how are you doing? Come into my office. And that's where he met the commander, he said. And he said, where are you from? He said, I am from where your Bible calls the bright and morning star. And he said, oh, that's Venus. So that's correct. And he said, well, why are you here? And he said, well, I was commissioned to come here to try to see if we could enter a treaty in with the United States. And I had an offer. And my offer was to provide, I met with President Eisenhower, he said, and I offered President Eisenhower the option to have free energy, the option to eliminate all pollution on the planet, and the option to eliminate all sickness and disease. And he said that when the commander had heard that offer, he came back and said, are you crazy? Don't you know that if I were to take your offer, it would totally collapse the financial structure of the United States?
Yeah.
That's probably what it would do. Yeah. And so what happened is, since the commander was turned down, he told Frank, he said, what happened is your president Eisenhower asked me if I'd be willing to work at the Pentagon and share some of my knowledge with the people that work at the Pentagon. I told him Commander Val told that by the name Dr. Frank Strange has confirmed that his name was Commander Valiant Thor. And so Commander Valiant Thor told Frank that he had told the President Eisenhower, that he had to get permission from his people first. And if he got the permission, he would come back and let President Eisenhower know. And he said he did come back. He got permission, but only to work at the Pentagon for 3 years. And he told Dr. Frank Stranges that he was at the very tail end of his 3-year stint at the Pentagon. and he was supposed to go to 4 spheres of influence: academia, scientific, the governmental, and the religious. And he said he was turned down on all 3 spheres except the religious category. And he knew Dr. Strange's was a minister. So he said, since I have been turned down on all 3 spheres, and the religious sphere is the only one left, and you're a minister, would you like to work together? And Dr. Frank said, yes, I would. And he says, okay, well, I will meet with you in 1 year and we will start working together. So that's Dr.
Wow.
Frank said that after that interview, he got out of the Pentagon, but he got arrested by the FBI, and they interrogated him for 5 hours because they wanted to know how he got through 2 security gates.
I love it. I love it.
And so what happened is Dr. Strange just told him the truth. He said, I just opened up my coat and got waved through.
No big espionage here.
Right. And so he said, but what was interesting is I heard him say during this interview on Art Bell that he said he was driving in Burbank, California in his car, and exactly to the date that Commander Valiant Thor said he would meet up with him was 1 year. And 1 year from that date, he was driving in his car, and in the back seat, he hears, "Hi, Frank, how are you doing?"
Wow.
He said he almost ran a red light. He stopped the car and said, "Get out and get in the front seat like a normal person." And he said he'd been working with the commander ever since. So when
Wow.
I heard this testimony on Coast to Coast, I was just completely blown away because there's nothing demonic about this, there's nothing dark about it. And I thought, well, I can't. His story is so unique and so novel. I can't believe he's just making it up. Well, he said he had a newsletter, and so I wrote to him and I said, I will. He said, if you want interested in getting my newsletter, write to me and I will get back with you. So I wrote to him and I said, I want to get your newsletter. And he said it's $100. And it said in the letter I got that I have to get it notarized, fill it out, and send it back to him. And I did. And so I started getting his newsletters. And I was making a transition from Houston because I got a new job to Colorado Springs. So I got the newsletter, but I didn't get to really, I only got one. And then I moved to Colorado Springs, and then I started reading more of them. And while I was reading the newsletters, I noticed that sometimes it wasn't just letters from Dr. Strange's, but there were other messages in the newsletter that were from other beings. And I thought, well, who are these? And it explained later that they are members of the commander's crew on board his UFO ship, which is called Victor 1. So I thought, oh, okay. So the ones I learned in the newsletter was there's a Commander Valiant Thor, and then he had 2 adopted brothers called Don and Thon. Okay. And they were vice commanders. And then there was the female Vice Commander Teal. And Teal was a beautiful singer from what I heard. And she also worked on the crew. And then there was the Doc. And then there was one guy by the name of Unaya, which was like 8 feet tall. And Dr. Strange just said he was kind of like a cyclops because he only had one eye. And his one eye is right in the center of the head. That's just the way their race is. It's one eye instead of 2 eyes. But he's very friendly. And he said that every time he went on board Victor 1, this tall guy by the name of Unaya would pick him up. And Dr. Frank he was pretty heavy guy. He probably weighed about 300 maybe, or maybe 250. I mean, he's a pretty big guy. But Unai would just pick him up right off the ground, just a piece of cake when he give him a big hug. And so, and then the other one they had on there was Yo, and he was from the edge of the universe, I think it was. So anyway, I learned about this crew, and then when I was reading one of the newsletters, I learned that they have an inner circle group. And I wrote to Dr. Strange to find out more about this. And he said, yes, this is a special group of people that if they want to join, they need to write a letter and ask why they want to join. and I will submit it to the commander, and he's the one that makes the decision. It's not me. So I thought, okay, I think I'll give it a try. So I wrote a letter, told him that I was raised as a Christian. I was helping abuse victims in my free time, and that I was a giving person, and I believed in UFOs.
Yeah.
And I got a reply, and yeah, he said, you're accepted. So my
Wow.
next meeting was in November 1997 was the first meeting I went to. And my main reason for joining and wanting to attend was I was still kind of a skeptic, you know,
Wow.
even though I kind of heard the story and it was kind of unbelievable, but believable also. I still wanted that solid proof. I wanted to be convinced that I wasn't being,
Yeah. Yeah.
fooled. So I wanted to see what kind of people were actually going to be attending this meeting. And I found out they were most all Christians because Dr. Strangest was a Christian.
Right.
And they were very loving, most loving people I've ever met. And they all believed that the Dr. Strangest's story was true and the commander's real. And so in these meetings, they would meet in Las Vegas twice a year. And when I would go, that was mostly just spiritual information. Some of it would come from Dr. Strange's, some of it would come from the commander.
Mm.
And so I would
These
read it,
people,
take it with me.
are these
Yes,
people, these commanders, are they part of what we are calling now the Galactics?
yes. I think they would fall into that category. Now, I know that Victor 1, it's a ship that was about 300, I think it's about 300 feet in diameter. And it was parked near Lake Mead in Henderson, Nevada. And what they can do is they can raise the vibration of the ship so it's invisible. So even though it's there, you can't see it and you won't be able to feel it. But I know that Dr. Strange has said that the Air Force would fly over there every day just in case maybe they could spot it.
Now, so when you went to these meetings, Bill, you went where? You
uh,
exactly you went.
they always met at the Rio Hotel in Las Vegas.
Okay.
And so we would have a dinner the night before, and then there would be over the weekend, and it would be 2 solid days of just basically sitting and hearing Dr. Strange just kind of teach. And
Wow.
he'd give us a little manual, and we would go through the manual, and some of it was from Dr. Strange's, and some of it was from members on board Victor One.
Wow.
I tended hoping, I think everybody hoped this, that maybe one day the commander would show up for one of these meetings. That's what we were all hoping. Because
Yeah.
there were always these rumors that some people, would come down with cancer or something and they would get taken on board Victor One and they'd get miraculously healed. But then
Yes.
they didn't want to talk about it because it was such an awesome experience and they didn't want to be ridiculed
Yeah.
or hounded with details. So they just clammed up and wouldn't talk. So we had these rumors all the time, but nobody could prove anything yet.
Yeah.
And then finally in 90, I attended, I think, a total of about 10 meetings. And when I attended that meeting, I bought Dr. Strange's book, Stranger at the Pentagon, but he had another book there that was very interesting called The Smoky God. I thought, I think I'll buy
Yes.
this. It doesn't cost very much. So I bought that book, and that book talked about the hollow earth.
Mm.
And it's a pretty quick read. I read the book, and after reading the book, I thought, well, this just rings kind of true. There's nothing. I mean, the guy says that he was placed in an insane asylum for 30 years by his uncle. Why would he make that up? It sounds like this is a real story. And so that got me onto this hollow earth research. So I started digging into that because Dr. Strange believed it was real. He said the commander goes there all the time. So I thought, well, okay, the hollow earth must be real. And he did a teaching one time called the Rainbow City, which is the city at the Antarctica, which is a city that used to be inhabited by very advanced higher dimensional beings. And the technology, some of it is still left over there, and it's very advanced. And he talked about that in one of the teachings I remember. So anyway, I had that book, and I always believed it was probably true, but I couldn't prove anything. And it wasn't later that I somehow stumbled across an interview with Andy Hart interviewing somebody that claimed to be from the Hollow Earth. And that happened to be someone by the name of Billy Fay, who was in the Air Force. And he was probably, I think he was retired. Yeah, he was retired from the Air Force. And they told him he was not to talk about anything to do with the Hollow Earth. And he didn't listen because he said his father is named Zora, who is with the main elder in the Hollow Earth. And he didn't recognize his father because when he was brought to the surface, and the way he described it is his father Zora asked him if he would like to do a divine mission with his daughter or with his sister on the surface of the planet. And this would have been back in the 50s. And so he came onto the surface of the planet, but they shrunk him down to like a toddler. And they left him in an area where they knew he'd be adopted. So he
Wow.
was adopted, but he said he was abused. And then, but he was always different from everybody else because he said he was kind of telepathic and he could talk to the animals and nobody else could. And he thought that was strange that he could do that, but nobody else could. And I heard this interview with him by Andy Hart on radio, and I thought, well, God, this is just more confirmation about the Hollow Earth that must really be real. So, that made me stay in and listen to more of those interviews that she would do every Saturday. Andy Hart would have Billy Fay on. And I learned, now the way he would do this is that he would trans channel with his father Zora. So what they would do is they would do a soul swap. So Zora's takes over Billy Fay's body, and Billy Fay's soul takes over Zora's body. So whatever Zora is experiencing in Hollow Earth, Billy Fay would be experiencing that when they do the swap. And so when Billy Fay would come back after the trans channeling, he would tell us what he got to experience in Zora's body. So in Zora, and it was always things like in the Hollow Earth, I learned that through Billy Fay that they're a fifth dimensional society. Everything is conscious. So, I mean, they talk to the trees, they talk to the animals. That's all done. Communication is telepathic, and everything is in perfect harmony. Everything works perfectly. And one thing that's kind of interesting, this was confirmed through Billy Fay and the Hollow Earth book, is that the trees, before they grab some fruit off the tree, they first communicate to the tree and ask permission to take one of the fruits. And if the tree says it's okay, then they take the fruit. They do always permission first. And according to Zora, when he came on through Billy Fay doing the trans channeling, he said there's dinosaurs, they're friendly. You communicate with the dinosaurs just like any other animal. They have gigantic spiders, but they're friendly and you communicate with them. All your like primitive animals, like the mammoth and stuff that we don't see anymore, they're all in the Hollow Earth.
Bill, let me ask you a question. How did Hollow Earth become inhabited? Like, how did that begin?
Well, that's an interesting story. According to Zora, the during the time of Lemuria and Atlantis, Atlantis struck Lemuria and sunk the continent. And that continent went under the ocean, but before it did, there was quite a group of individuals that knew that their continent was going to sink. But the big question was when that deluge happened, that big destruction of their planet, it created so much fear that they knew that the vibration on the surface of the planet was going to drop. It was at a 5D frequency, and then it had already dropped down to a 4D frequency, and they knew it was going to go to a 3D frequency. So what happened is they decided that they were going to go into the Hollow Earth. And according to Zora, all planets are the way they're created hollow. Every planet, even our moon and the sun, are hollow. And Zora says that our sun is not hot, it's cold. But he said there's a hologram in front of it that makes it look like it's hot. And when someone asks Zora, why is that? He says it's to keep you away from it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. He says, we don't want you coming toward the sun. And so we have a hologram, and that's what you're going to see. And it's going to look like it's hot with molten everything. But he said it's not really hot. It's really like another planet. And so, and it's hollow as well. And there's beings that live inside the sun, and they're called the Hathors.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so Zora really filled me in on all the missing stuff. I got clued in about the Hollow Earth reading the Smoky God, but Zora kind of filled in all the pieces for me.
Mhm.
Are you
And
still in touch with the people, all of those people with the
what's that?
meeting? Are you still, sorry, let me go closer to my mic. Are you still in touch with all of those people?
Yes, I am. They
You
do.
are.
They do a call about every other Saturday, Sunday now. They were doing Saturdays, but they switched to Sunday, so it's like every other Sunday now. I like the earlier times when they had their calls because Zora came on more and did a lot of Q&As, and so I got to learn a lot because of the Q&As that people would ask. But Zora did say that there is going to be we're coming to disclosure, and he said it's very getting very close. He believes it will happen in the next. I think he thinks it's going to happen before the end of this year,
Mhm.
and he says that the way it's going to work is that we already have. He said they already have the Galactics have their ships parked in certain locations, just like Victor One in Henderson, Nevada, where it was made invisible. They have UFO craft in different locations all over the planet, and they're actually landed and they're on the ground, but you can't see them.
Right.
And he said, what's going to happen is when there's going to be a decloaking, these ships will be visible. And he said, when they are, that then disclosure happens. He said, these ships are going to be used for healing. And he says they're not going to be in the major cities, but out in the rural areas. And he said what these are going to be used for is to heal those first with missing limbs. Next is going to be those with diseases like cancer and stuff, but mostly children first, and then the adults would be next. And he said they have the ability to heal anything. So now we've also heard that there's going to be a technology called the med beds that's going to provide this technology. The
Hmm.
Galactics already have this technology on their UFO chips, and it's going to be easier for them just to land the ship and you go on board and use it and then go off. You don't have to worry about locations, getting it set up, managing it all, and that will happen eventually, but it's just going to be so much easier to have it on the ship because we know there's a dark element on this planet and they're going to try to destroy them.
I'm
So,
wondering, now we are going after disclosure, Earth is going on, and how does this coincide with this ascension to higher vibrations that we are going through?
Okay. Well, what happened is after I learned about Dr. Strange's and his meetings, and as well as now I want to mention real quick, Augie, before I talk about this ascension. When I was on board trying to determine whether Dr. Frankie Strange's was the real deal, he had some stories that really did just convince me for sure that he was telling the truth. One, he had 4 near-death experiences on his life to take him out. But the main thing was these novel stories that he would tell that I just knew that he couldn't be making this stuff up because they're just too creative. And one of them was he said when he went on board Victor One for the first time, he said what happens is you have to disrobe, take off your clothes, you go through a decontamination spray, and then your the onboard computer will size up your body. It takes measurements without automatically, you don't have to do anything, and it spits out a uniform in seconds that will conform perfectly to your body. And
wow.
he says you put that on and it will completely hug your body with no seams. It just completely seals itself. And he said while he was on there, he put on one of these suits after he got decontaminated, but he had to go to the restroom. And he didn't know if they had restrooms on the UFOs.
Right?
So he heard them kind of giggling because on Victor 1, they're telepathic and they can read your mind. And they knew what he was thinking. And so they said when he heard them laughing, he looked at him and they said, right over there is where you want to go. And so he went over there and he saw, oh, it's a bathroom. Great. So he went in there and he did a number 2. And after his number 2, he didn't see any toilet paper, he said. And so he didn't know what to do since there wasn't any toilet paper. But he heard some giggling outside the door. And they told him, hey, telepathically, they said, Frank, look over to the right. They said, you'll see button number 1, button number 2, and button number 3. They said, push button number 1. He did, and he got a splash on his bottom. He pushed button number 2. They told him to push that next. He got a blow dry. And then he pushed button number 3, and he got a squirt of perfume.
How thoughtful. They're thoughtful.
And he said when he got out of there, he said they were laughing. And he said that when he got out of there, they asked him, would you like to take one home with you?
I would. I want to take one.
Yeah.
No, this is incredible. Most of us began maybe waking up, 2012-ish. You started in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
You had a really early awakening before we could not even understand where that was going to lead.
I've always been ahead of everybody else because of that. I always had that head start. So what happened is one more story that Dr. Strange said that really convinced me he was telling the truth. He said that they had this children's fund where they raise money for children that are left for dead around the world, and the commander picks them up, rescues them, brings them to the United States to find families to adopt them. They're taking money to buy toys for them. So he said that they have a bank. They used a bank in Las Vegas, and they have a water car on board Victor 1, and they can lower the ramp so you only see the ramp. The water car goes down, and then it goes into Las Vegas, and they put money in the bank or take money out of the bank for the children's fund. So Vice Commander Teal was going to the bank, and Las Vegas, it's out in the desert, nothing there, and she likes to go fast, so she stepped on that gas. Well, she got stopped, Dr. Stranger said, by a police officer. He wanted to see her ID. Well, she's a Galactic. She didn't have ID.
Yeah.
But they have this ability, just like Dr. Frank said, going through the security gates. It's a technique they have called teleprojection, where they can make you see something or do something that you wouldn't normally do. And that police officer saw a badge, even though she didn't have one. And he said, I'm going to have to write you a ticket. And Dr. Strange said he started making out the ticket, but he made it out to his name, his address, and his telephone number, and then gave Vice Commander Teal a copy of it. And Dr. Strange said, I'm sure he had some explaining to do when he went back to the precinct. Why did he make a ticket out to himself?
Wow.
I'm thinking so.
So anyway, I knew Dr. Strange was telling that he was the truth. And so what happened though on my continuing journey for the truth, because it's like a never ending journey. And I just kept coming across one thing after another thing after another thing. And I was really wanting to know the answers to the big questions like, why am I here? And I know these UFOs are real now, and I know there's some good ones and they're here, but why are they here? And what's their real purpose? What is this? What is the big answers to the questions like, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Well, that's in 2003. I started reading Lightworker messages. And I didn't know if they were real or not, but they seemed to be truthful. But then there was stuff in these Lightworker messages that contradicted my Christian upbringing, because they would talk about things like reincarnation. And I wanted to throw it out, but I said, well, they got a lot of other interesting stuff. I'm going to keep reading them, I think. So I kept reading them, but every time I would read one, I'd always get this, our many lifetimes and how we lived in Atlantis and Lemuria. And so they were always reinforcing reincarnation is a real thing. This got me doing more research and more digging. So I started researching this area to make sure that what's the truth on this. And I found um, uh, I asked my guides to, there's a technique that always works and it never fails. When you're trying to find the truth, say it out loud to your guides that you want to know the truth on this particular thing, and then say thank you and just wait and be patient, but you will always get your answer. I got flooded. I got flooded with this, I wanted to know, is this reincarnation for real? Well, I heard an interview on Coast to Coast with Art Bell interviewing a guy by the name of Brian Weiss, who did regression therapy, and he didn't believe in reincarnation. He said he'd take them back to their birth, but that was it. And he said, but he'd get these encounters where they'd go beyond their birth, and he couldn't figure it out. He thought they were just flukes. But he said it happens so often, and they start talking about another lifetime in another place. And I heard this interview, and I thought, wow, this is kind of confirming that maybe this reincarnation stuff is real. And then I thought, well, what else can I just started digging on the internet, and then I found out this whole cover up of the Vatican dealing with covering up reincarnation. They wanted to substitute hell instead.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, boy, I always look for at least 2 or 3 confirmations, but then I kept getting, it just kept flooding. I got one with a story about a girl that was interviewing someone at the Vatican, or she's telling her story that she was talking to one of the cardinals at the Vatican, and he told her that reincarnation is for real, but they're secretly hidden away in the Vatican archives, and she's not to really share the information, but she did anyway. And I thought, oh, now that's interesting. Sounds like a big cover up. And then after that, I heard stories, multiple stories of children that could remember that they had a previous lifetime, and they would give all the details of where they lived and how they got murdered in that lifetime, and they'd tell their parents.
Wow.
And their parents were able to confirm the story and all the details in the city they grew up in. They saw the signs, the house, everything. So I was convinced. I said, okay, these light worker messages is right about reincarnation. I'm convinced. Okay, but then that got me thinking, if Christianity was wrong about reincarnation, what else is it wrong about? And that's when I started doing more research and finding out there's all kinds of omissions and things. And then when Zora came on, when I was listening to one of the calls, and he said that Billy Fay was studying to be in the seminary. And he was in a church in Louisiana, and he actually had a trip over to Israel to speak to a rabbi. And the rabbi showed him the actual Dead Sea Scrolls and interpreted what it said in the book of Genesis. And it said, and Billy Fay gave the exact quote. He said, it said, "Let us create man in our image and our likeness, with our powers and abilities." That part was omitted. And when Billy Fay went back to his church in Louisiana and told the congregation what he was told by a rabbi in Israel of what the Dead Sea Scrolls really said, that we were created in God's image and in his likeness with their powers and abilities, that the pastor of that church told Billy Fay he needed to move on. They didn't need him there anymore. And he decided to not go into the seminary. He abandoned that altogether. So, so anyway, my truth seeking kept going, but the main thing that I got out of the light worker messages was there's a constant theme over and over and over, and that was about ascension. And that this planet is ascending to a higher dimension. And I knew that reading every message, it just always was about ascension. We need to raise our vibration. And I didn't know exactly what dimensions were, but basically I learned that dimensions is just simply you can think of it as a window of frequencies. So you have a window of frequencies for the 3rd dimension, a window of frequencies for the 4th, and another window of frequencies for the 5th. And in that range of frequencies, the physics is a little bit different. So you have the physics for 3rd dimensional realm, and then you have kind of like for instance, the time and the law of attraction is very slow in the third dimension. There's a lag time.
Mhm.
But when you move into the fourth dimension, everything is faster and it's kind of a quasi time. And you can kind of relocate to different places really fast. So the physics is a little bit different in the fourth dimension. And in the fifth dimension, it's even different there. There, when you try to manifest something, it happens instantly. So there is
Wow.
no. So I learned by reading these lightworker messages that it's very important to control your thoughts because you are a creator. And that's what the lightworker messages teach. You are a divine, multidimensional creator, and you need to watch your thoughts because you're creating all the time.
Yep.
And so what happened is, as I said, okay, I gotta now the main thing you got to learn to control though is not just your thoughts, but your emotions. Because it's
Yes.
your emotions that really do the manifesting, that really do the creation. You've got to get your feelings involved, right? So when you get your feelings involved, that's what really causes the manifestation. So you really want to make sure that you've got high vibrational feelings all the time. So this is something you have to learn, and you just got to practice being kind of conscious of your thoughts and your emotions throughout your life, kind of as you're living, kind of monitor yourself and be observant. And it takes
Yes.
a while to kind of train yourself to do that because so much of the time we get wrapped up in the drama of life and we actually don't think about our thoughts and our emotions and we get caught up in that drama and we get in an argument or we do whatever and it lowers our vibration. So I
Exactly.
started practicing this really early on when I read the Lightworker message. I need to watch my thoughts, watch my emotions, and work on raising my vibration because that's the key if you're going to be ascending. Now, there's kind of a controversy right now that I'm finding out about do we take our bodies with us or not? Because I'm still unclear on that. I heard early on, I always read the Lightworker messages. They would say you would cross over a rainbow bridge and you would take your body with you. But that's why you need to raise your vibration. But now
Mm.
I'm hearing no, our physical bodies can't go because they won't survive. There's a voltage in the fifth dimension that is much higher and it would just explode ourselves and our physical body can't go. So I'm hearing what'll happen is we'll have like an instant incarnation into a new light body of some kind, or we'll take one of our higher, since we are multidimensional, we have these other bodies that are, some of them are in the higher dimensions than the third. We have the physical body in the third dimension. We have an emotional body and a mental body and an etheric body. Those are in the fourth dimension. We have a higher self in the fifth dimension and like an I am presence in the sixth dimension. And that's another thing I learned from the Lightworker messages is that we're really an extension of Creator Source. So we have all these different bodies and parts that go all the way back to Creator Source. We're not really separate from Creator Source. We're actually just an extension of Creator Source. The
Mhm.
reason we don't know that, and the reason it doesn't seem that that's the way, is because when we incarnate on this planet, we get a veil of forgetfulness, so that we can play the game of duality. You couldn't play the game of duality if everybody knew they were a god and they acted like a god. You
Exactly.
have to shield that memory so that they can play the dark role or
Yes.
stab somebody in the back and do whatever. So you have this duality. And the reason that we're here, I learned from the Lightworker messages, is to learn lessons to advance our soul growth because you learn so much when you are actually challenged with darkness and evil. And we have a lot of challenges here on this planet. And if you're in the higher realms, you really don't get that many challenges. Everything is just great. So you don't
Right.
really change your soul that much. Here, man, you're confronted with darkness all the time, or somebody stabbing you in the back or trying to rip you off or whatever, and you got to learn to control yourself. So, you know, I was reading one day, I was reading a Lightworker message, and it was called Ashtar Command, which is a kind of a subdivision of the Galactic Federation. It was called the Ashtar's 7 Steps to Self Mastery. And I read those and I thought, oh, these are great. I like these. There were 7 steps, but I started thinking about it for a while and I said, well, wait a minute. Ashtar's in the higher fifth dimension and he's not really challenged like we are down here. We're in duality. So these self-mastery steps are great, but I'm going to have to add some more steps in order to deal with this duality down here. So I added 5 more steps. So I created what's called this 12 steps to self-mastery. And I included some steps that weren't part of Ashtar 7, which included things like forgiving other people when, forgiveness, because that wasn't in there. Another was be quick to apologize. And I added 5 good ones. And I used it, then I decided to use this as a pretext for an idea to create a humanitarian project, because I had been so rewarded by the Lightworker messages and I wanted to repay them back. So I wanted to do a humanitarian project to unite all the Lightworkers under one umbrella association, a global international association that would bring them all to bring everybody together and maybe do a conference or an expo every year. And I'm using the 12 steps as your way to get in. All you got to do is memorize them. If you can demonstrate, that you got these steps memorized, you're in for the first year. Dues won't start for the second year, but the first year you just got to memorize the 12 steps.
How can people become part of that and get the steps?
Well, I'm working on, I've got my executive summary done, and I'm just waiting on funding. And we think funding is just around the corner because we've got the BRICS nations, which I'm hearing is going to be backing their currency with gold around the 22nd or the 25th of August. And I believe that that's going to cause all these other countries that are wanting to join BRICS to also follow suit. So the U.S., even though they're not welcomed into BRICS, I think they're also working on backing their currency with gold. And I'm hearing that there's a new financial system, because the whole goal is to get us to move into the 5th dimension, according to the Galactics. That's the goal. And in order to do that, that means these old 3D structures are going to be crumbling. And so they have to replace things with new 5D structures. And those 5D structures, one of them is called the quantum financial system. And that is going to be replacing the current financial system. So I'm waiting on funding. And when funding, we're hearing that before they switch us to a gold-backed currency, there's going to be a currency reevaluation, because there's some countries that currency was devalued due to war, like Vietnam and Iraq and Zimbabwe. They all experienced war and their currency just completely devalued, and it's never recovered. So they say if you own these currencies, you're going to be there's going to be a reevaluation, and you'll be able to exchange them. And that's the money. And they say that you'll get a higher rate when you exchange these currencies if you come in showing that you have some humanitarian project. I call mine a libertarian project because I didn't like the term humanitarian when I looked up the definition. It only deals with welfare of humans, and that's it. And I wanted to encompass something. I wanted a definition for that encompassed unconditional love and applied not just welfare, but love and welfare and happiness for all creation, including the animals and Mother Earth and everything. So I created a new word called libertarian. So instead of humanitarian, I have libertarian. So I have two libertarian projects, and those will be revealed when I get the funding to create the websites. And I'm working on. I've got the executive summaries done. I need to finalize a what's called a private membership association for this international association that I'm creating. And then the other one is my big project, which has to do with educating people about the Galactics. And it entails a museum and planetarium and that sort of stuff. But that'll be down the road. I want to kind of use the first project to funnel people. People that join the first project will be great candidates to be moved into if they want to be part and work into the second project that I have. Because I'm looking for higher consciousness people to be part of this Galactiplex that I'll be creating. So,
So sorry, go ahead, Audrey. Yep.
Yeah, we're down to the end of the show here, and I'm wondering, would you be open to people joining your email list, because you're sending out an awful lot of good stuff?
Oh yeah, sure. Anybody that will,
give people your email so they can get in touch with you.
yes, just tell them, okay, my email is wmee@earthlink.net. wmee@earthlink.net. And just tell them to put in the email, I want to join your email list.
Yeah, that'd be
And
good.
I'll add them to the list.
Okay, sounds good. And I learned a long time ago that when you're in the presence of excellence, I want to listen more than I talk. So that's why they gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth. You know, you got to remember that.
This was so great, Bill. Thank you so much. You have to come on again and expand on some more of these topics
Yeah.
with us. Yeah,
When
that
I
would
get
be
these websites created, you can have me on again, and I'll direct people where to go to these websites so they can be part of this association. Because I think a lot of people are going to want to join this new association.
Yeah,
No,
that's under development. So you will let people know in your emails about that, and
Yeah.
then they will be plugged in.
Yes.
awesome. Well,
Thank you.
Yes, Bill, thank you. Thank you, Avi. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us on the new paranormal show right here on Broadcast Team Alpha. You can catch us again next Sunday right here at 9 o'clock, or you can also check us out Tuesday night, 8 p.m. on the Broadcast Team Alpha YouTube channel. And the very quick 30-minute snippet, Quantum Wellbeing, 7:30 Friday night. Much love, everybody. Take care of each other. I'll see you
Thank
next
you.
time. Bye, Bill. Thank you.
You